Skull902 in post here because I forgot to record this originally. If you'd like a chance to win a physical copy of Sonic X Shadow Generations for your console of choice, stay tuned to this video. Hey everyone, Skull902 here. Blaze the Cat, introduced in Sonic Rush, is one of my favorite Sonic characters. Her fire powers, along with her sense of responsibility and independence, have made her one of the more well-received members of the cast. After a confusing period where it was unclear whether her backstory from Rush or 06 was canon, it was firmly established in Generations that she comes from the Soul Dimension, ruling over her world as its princess. Despite this being the case, recent works and comments from the powers that be with the franchise suggest they'd rather be done with the place. Why might that be? Let's break it down. In Sonic Rush, we don't really see the Soul Dimension since the story takes place in Sonic's, but we get some establishment. It's Blaze's universe, she's the princess and hero of her world, the Soul Emeralds come from there, and the nefarious Eggman Nega is her arch-nemesis. The Soul Emeralds aren't exactly one-to-one with the Chaos Emeralds, but they also grant Blaze her Burning transformation which, along with Supersonic, she uses to take out both Eggmen and prevent the worlds from colliding and destroying each other. Overall, it's something to build off of, and they proceeded to do so in the game's sequel. Sonic Rush Adventure, released in 2007, takes place in the Soul Dimension instead, with Sonic and Tails transported there, helping Blaze stop the Eggmen from stealing the power of the Jeweled Scepter. Here we're introduced to various islands in Blaze's world, the koalas that make up most of its residents, and the ever-annoying Marine the Raccoon. Considering the koalas and Marine speaking in Australian slang, imagine the Soul Dimension as Australia if it were a planet. No word yet on if the wildlife can poison you if you look at them wrong though. Also established is the Jeweled Scepter, which can not only control weather patterns and geological activity, but also sustain the coexistence of the multiverse. Very powerful item. What we get with those details, in my opinion, is the foundation of a world that could be the setting for even more stories and build on with additional lore. I'll get back to that point in a second, but first I gotta discuss how confused they made the whole thing with Blaze. In Sonic 06, Blaze is presented as being from the future with no mention of her lineage as a princess or the Soul Dimension at all. This was a byproduct of the console and handheld platformers being treated separately at the time. Didn't stop them from implying a previous meeting between Sonic and Blaze, making the whole situation even weirder and stumping everyone as to what her backstory actually was. I've made a video on the subject before and the answer was codified in Sonic Generations, which explicitly uses her Rush origin in her character profile. Just ignore a contradictory comment she makes about Crisis City after you do her challenge act there. It's probably been retconned that's Sega's favorite thing to do. While not canon to the games, I gotta hand it to the Archie comics for giving it a go at making more of the Soul Dimension. It starts off with a couple small changes. Blaze looking for the Soul Emeralds after Eggman Nega displaced them throughout the multiverse, which would become her arc before and after the Super Genesis wave, which I'll get to in a sec. Adaptations of Rush and Rush Adventure were followed up by Blaze and Marine helping Shadow fight off Metal Sonic and get him back home. Sometime later, Doctors Eggman and Wily nabbed Blaze from her home and turned her into Blaze Woman before Sonic and Mega Man were able to reverse it. While caught up in a large-scale battle against a team of Robot Masters, the Super Genesis wave hit, altering reality. But in an interesting move, the Soul Dimension was largely protected from it by the Jeweled Scepter, and Blaze herself retained her previous memories. Elements from before the wave hit wound up in her world, which I think is pretty cool. She, Marine, Amy, and Cream fight off Team Hooligan and the Blackguard Pirates, one of whom is a rebuilt version of the Metal Sonic she previously helped destroy. Once Captain Metal is vanquished and the final Soul Emerald recovered, Blaze uses them to transport Amy and Cream back home, which is the last thing seen of the Soul Dimension before the comic was cancelled. Saying this after only having read a summary of the events involved, while it's not perfect and some things could have been changed, I think it shows that additional stories in Blaze's world are more than doable. They gave her a complete arc while leaving the door open for more, with some super interesting ideas in there too. With that in mind, let's see how they've been handling it in more recent works. Blaze makes her first IDW comic appearance in its 4th issue, where it's shown that the Soul Emeralds can alert her to trouble brewing in other worlds, as well as transport her there at a moment's notice. Sonic makes a comment about how she was late for Sonic Forces, her lack of inclusion in the game being a huge missed opportunity in my eyes, but that's a story for another video. Blaze telling him in Tangle that the Soul Emeralds wouldn't have alarmed her for no reason, deciding to stick around in Sonic's world until the problem is resolved. She assists the Resistance in taking back Angel Island from Metal Sonic by using her burning form against the Egg Fleet, where I believe it's shown for the first time that the transformation quickly burns out the Soul Emerald's energy, unlike how the Super Transformation can be sustained for an extended period of time. She returns to the Soul Dimension after all's said and done, where Sonic crash lands after transporting the Metal Virus to a place where it can't harm anyone, giving him amnesia. And this I really feel could have been a short storyline to show off more of this world. Have Sonic make friends with no memory of who he is, and then find Blaze later. Just a little bit of world building, you know? Instead it's like, hey, do you remember who you are? No. Now you do. Okay, bye! Honestly, the whole ending of the Metal Virus arc, this included, wasn't done very well. A shame, considering how good everything leading up to it was. Why don't we have a look at what the Japanese side of Sega was cooking up with the 2021 Sonic Channel cover stories, where Blaze and the Soul Dimension were featured. It doesn't really add anything, being a simple story about Blaze reminding herself of the value of teamwork, fighting alongside Sonic to protect the Jeweled Scepter from pirate robots after she told him to stay out of it, as it was her responsibility. The fight isn't quite over as Blaze is confronted by a headless Captain Whisker, taking him on alone to allow Sonic to teleport back home. Nothing terribly substantial, but again, is another example in my eyes of how a story set in Blaze's world can work. That potential would all come to a screeching halt, however, with the Sonic IDW 2022 annual. In the story Guardians, it's shown that Blaze and Marine have taken out the rest of the pirate robots and their enemies have all skipped town, putting the Soul Dimension at peace. Knuckles convinces Blaze to spend an extended vacation in Sonic's world, where she's been ever since. While her misadventure story with Sonic was one of the best the folks at IDW have produced in my opinion, I think that ridding her world of danger and villains is one of the worst things they've ever written, along with the Deadly Six takeover of Restoration HQ and Dr. Starline as a character. I spoke of the potential it has for a story set within. Saying all the bad guys fucked off strips Blaze of what she's supposed to be, her world's hero, equivalent to Sonic. Since then, she's just kinda been there. She helped out a bit in the Eggperial City, featuring some real fucking revisionist history, am I right? But along with Silver did the least of anybody there, and then helped Silver make deliveries for the Restoration. It largely feels like they want her around but have nothing for her. Making the situation worse is the confirmation through Frontiers and subsequent statements that the comics are canon, leaving no room for further adventures in the Soul Dimension in the games as well. Unless they're setting up a surprise for when she does return, which doesn't feel like the case at all. The decision, I think, is bad not only for Blaze as a character, but the world she comes from as well. Now, of course, we can't entirely discount the possibility that Sega of Japan may have had something to do with the decision. The brass there were responsible for Shadow's awful characterization in the first couple arcs of the IDW comics, for example. However, it's been confirmed that since the writing of Frontiers, there's a dedicated team with control over the creative direction of the franchise, and longtime comic writer Ian Flynn is a part of that operation. On his Bumblecast podcast last year, he said he'd rather do away with the Soul Dimension and merge it with Sonic's world because he doesn't believe it has enough to it. Which, wouldn't that make it a perfect palette to build upon? New zones, new characters, new MacGuffins, Blaze in a never-ending battle of good and evil with her nemesis Eggman Nega, with other new villains in the mix. Hell, on an earlier Bumblecast he even pitched the idea of a rival nation. That's interesting, that builds the world. But, as long as he has this opinion of the Soul Dimension being cumbersome, it seems what we currently have is going to stay. Those comments from Mr. Flynn are why I personally believe the people currently writing Sonic are abandoning the Soul Dimension. I've heard some crazy takes before, like Eggman Nega not being used anymore because his name sounds like a word frequently found in the lyrics of hip-hop songs. But one, no it doesn't. 2, it didn't stop them from using him in plenty of multiplayer games up to Mario and Sonic at the Rio Summer Olympics. And 3, Sega likes to retcon anyway, as previously mentioned. If it was such a problem, couldn't they rename him something like Eggmaster, which I think actually sounds pretty badass? Whatever the case may be, I hope we can see a full-on return to the Soul Dimension someday, because Blaze is a great character and deserves a chance not only to take the spotlight, but fulfill her purpose as its hero. If you'd like to win a physical copy of Sonic X Shadow Generations, consider making a public donation toward our $40 Extra Life gift raffle. Link is in the description. You'll also be entered for a chance to win one of our other prizes, which will be announced soon. Thanks for your consideration. Thanks for watching. Feel free to let me know what you thought about the video in the comments. Give it a like if you liked it, or a dislike if you didn't. If you'd like to see more, subscribe and click the bell for notifications. It's free and you can opt out anytime. Here's a playlist with similar content, and my Twitter. I have been Skull902, thank you again for watching, and have yourselves a wonderful day.